Okay, we'd like to welcome you guys to a Hometown Hero presentation we have today. We have a true Gulf War Marine who happens to be a high school teacher here at Prescott High School, Mr. John Strzepek. I'll let you take it over.
Okay, well, I assume I'm here because some of you may have an interest someday in joining the service, whether it be the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, or the Marines. So I'm here to provide a little bit of insight on why I joined, what I got out of the experience, why you might want to join or not join even, depending on what your personality type is like. So a little about myself. I was raised in a place called Pittsfield, Massachusetts, a town just about the size of Prescott. I graduated from high school in 1981. I went to Berkshire Community College for a year with the idea that maybe someday I would join the Air Force actually and be a pilot, because I really kind of wanted to go towards the space program. So I was walking down the street in my second year of college, and a Marine recruiter walks up to me and says, "You ever think about joining the Marine Corps?" And I said, "Absolutely not." And then we started talking. And he explained to me that the Marines had their own Air Force. We have our own fixed wing capability. Okay, we have F-18s, we have Harriers, we have OV-10s, and we have C-130s. Okay, well that's kind of moving in the direction I want. And then he explained that in the Air Force, if you want to fly, there are many, many different aircraft that you can fly, most of which are not what we call fast movers, okay? Things like what Colonel Peoples flew, F-15s, F-16s. Most Air Force pilots, unless I'm incorrect, Colonel Peoples, fly tankers, supply planes, things of that nature.
Because we support the Marines.
Okay, so if you want to go fast in combat, if you become a Marine aviator and you are lucky enough to get jets, you are going to fly an combat aircraft, okay? It's not going to be a tanker. We don't even own such things. We have a couple C-130s. Most of those use are Spectre gunships, okay? Or they're going into expeditionary airfields. So that sounded pretty good to me. And they had a thing called the PLC flight program, platoon leaders class, where you go to OCS while you're in college. You do 2 sessions, once between your freshman and sophomore year, and one between your junior and senior year. They're 6 weeks each. And if you pass those, then your senior year of college, they'll give you flight lessons that the Marine Corps pays for. That sounded pretty good. So, I don't know what happened. A couple hours later, next thing you know, I was signing on the dotted line. And I had to go down to the MEPS office and get my physical, make sure I was physically qualified, take an ASVAB. There was quite a bit involved, but I did that. So I went to OCS in 1983 and 1985. Okay, graduated from 84. Graduated from college in 85 and was commissioned as second lieutenant in the Marine Corps. Now, just to give you an idea, OCS is no cakewalk.
Explain what OCS means.
OCS in the Marine Corps is a very, very intense experience.
Explain what OCS is.
OCS is Officers Candidate School. I still remember when I walked into the officer selection office to tell him I wanted to fly jets. He looked at me and he says, "You know, for every young man that walks in here, 1 in 100 will make it to that jet seat." And I guess for some of you who maybe that's your dream, you have to be the kind of person who hears that and doesn't shy away. And I'm sure it's not much different in the Air Force. I don't know what the rates are in the Air Force, Colonel Peoples, but for the guy who wants to fly that F-15, from the guy who walks into OCS to the guy who gets to ride, I would imagine it's probably a similar number. Okay? So if you're motivated to do something like that, you cannot back down from a challenge. You have to say, "Challenge accepted," and go forward. Because the only way you achieve those dreams is to take one step forward and take the next step, whatever that is. Okay? So I went to what we call the basic school, or TBS, which every Marine officer goes to. It's a 6-month infantry school. Okay? After OCS. I should back up. In OCS, they tell you when you get there, look to your left, look to your right. If you graduate from this program, those individuals will not be there. 1 in 3 make it through Marine OCS. Most of them quit. You have the option at any time of dropping on request, and many do. In Marine OCS, if you were to fall off of a run or a hike and do it twice, you're out. If you get below an 80 on a test, you're out. Your day begins at 4 a.m., it ends about 2200, and then you have things to do like studying. Okay? And that's going to keep you up past midnight. You're going to operate on 4 hours of sleep for 6 weeks. You're going to be doing serious physical training. Many Marines who have passed boot camp cannot pass Marine OCS. It's that much more intense. And then at the end of all of that, we have a thing called peer evaluations. where each member of the platoon rates every other member of the platoon on leadership potential. And that's where the drill instructors who are with you most of the time find out the things you do when you're not around. Because if you're that guy who sneaks food into the barracks when you're not supposed to sneak food, your peers will rat you out on peer evaluations. They will say he has no integrity. Integrity is a huge thing in the Marine Corps. You want to get kicked out in a hurry, show a lack of integrity. And so what happens is a couple of those guys who got by because they cheated a little bit here or they cheated a little bit there got picked up on peer evaluations, and after 12 weeks of training in the second year, the Marine Corps says, bye-bye, you're not welcome anymore, you are not Marine officer material, you're not an honest individual, you have no integrity, you don't belong here. And that is not limited to just the officer corps. The Marine Corps values integrity. Okay, so that's, if you've ever thought about joining the Marine Corps, it's a value system. You can't survive in that if you can't trust the man to your right and trust the man to your left in a bad situation. So, of all the leadership values, and there are 14 leadership values that the Marine Corps preaches, number one is integrity. I have to be able to trust you at all times to tell me the truth, even when you have done something wrong. It is better that you own up to it, take your punishment, and be a man about it, than try to lie out of it. I promise you, if you lie, your punishment will be far worse in the Corps. And that goes for life in general. All right, so I finish OCS, and then every Marine officer goes to a 6-month infantry school.
Where was OCS?
OCS is in Quantico, Virginia.
Virginia, okay.
And the basic school is also in Quantico, Virginia. They call it the crossroads of the Marine Corps because everybody goes there to school at some point or another. So that's a 6-month infantry school. Regardless of what you were going to do in the Marine Corps, you will be a trained infantry officer. You'll go for 6 months. If you're going to specialize in infantry, there'll be an additional 3 months after that. So anyway, I did my 6 months, walked out of there in the top 10% of my class of 200, and went off to flight school. Go to flight school, that's in Pensacola, Florida, and you go to what they call primary flight. It was there that everybody trains on a T-34 Charlie, which is kind of looks like a World War II aircraft with a turbo prop on it. And they make a selection there. If you pass, you're either going to get rotary wing, which means helicopters, which for the Marine Corps means CH-53s, which are a big single Sea Stallion, a CH-46, which has the big twin rotors. You've probably seen them, big one in the front, big one in the back, and they go off like that. A UH-1, which is a Huey, which you've seen in every Vietnam movie you've ever watched, or an AH-1 Cobra, which is an attack helicopter where they sit front and rear, and there's a gunner who sits in the front, pilot sits in the rear. Okay? Or, that's 2/3 of all Marine aviators get selected for rotary wing. 1/3 gets selected for jets, and you have to compete for those slots. I walked out of my flight class. Number one in my class was the first aviator, student pilot, to get jets in a 3-month span. Went to Beeville, Texas, where we do intermediate flight, where I was flying a T-2 Charlie. And then I was doing real well there, and partway through a flight, I had an episode where my vision went from standard to 2200. So I was immediately grounded. I had to relinquish control to the instructor, and when we landed, I had to go see the flight doc, and he says, you either have multiple sclerosis or a brainstem virus. Which, to me, says, at that moment, I realized my flight career was over. Because while you're in the student pipeline, they're not going to wait for you for 6 months or a year to figure out what's wrong with you. So, as it turned out, obviously, I'm still here, so it was a brainstem virus that ended. Now, I spent a long time feeling sorry for myself because my dream of going through the flight program, maybe getting to NASA one day, which one of my buddies did make it to NASA, C.J. Laurier ended up being a shuttle pilot, was crushed. And that's where character is forged. Because when that happens, you have to say to yourself, we can feel bad for ourselves when bad things happen for a while, right? And I was, and that's a normal feeling. But I was driving down the road one day from Corpus Christi, Texas to Beeville, listening to an old radio announcer whose name was Paul Harvey. And Paul Harvey was on the radio, and he was talking about a man named Andrew Carnegie. Does anybody know who he is? Andrew Carnegie was a poor Scottish immigrant who came to America with only the clothes on his back, and in the course of a lifetime became the richest man in America. So if a man like that has advice, I probably want to listen. So Paul Harvey says, Andrew Carnegie said, key to success, when you fall down, get up. And it was at that moment of clarity I decided to get up. I was going to move on with my life. Okay, something bad happened, time to go forward. So I went and joined the artillery. because I had a choice of wherever I wanted to go. And I said, if I'm going to be in the Marine Corps, I want to be a shooter. I want to be in a combat arms environment. So I ended up going into the artillery, Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And because I was motivated by what had just happened, something bad had just happened to me, the Marine in me says, I cannot quit. Walked out of there the honor grad, 1st of 81. And then finished my tour of active duty, the 2nd Battalion, 10th Marines, out of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Okay, so I finished my 4 years, had a family construction business that was calling for me, wanted me to come home and work with them. I really thought about staying in, but my mom kind of put a little pressure on me, and I probably shouldn't have listened, but I did. I get out, and I said, I don't really want to be done with the Marine Corps yet entirely. So there was a reserve unit in New York City that was infantry, Fox Company, 2nd Battalion, 25th Marines. So I joined them, and I joined the infantry. I'm in the infantry exactly 6 months when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. And we become the first rifle company activated since World War II. Okay? We get sent down to Camp Lejeune. They break up our company because they had what they call light armored vehicles. Anybody know what a light armored vehicle is? LAV-25. Colonel Peoples, do you think you could find a picture of an LAV-25?
I certainly can. LEV-25?
LAV-25.
Okay.
And it's called the Piranha. It's an 8-wheeled armored reconnaissance vehicle, and our battalion was called Light Armored Infantry. It has since been renamed the Light Armored Reconnaissance, and that is our mission, Light Armored Reconnaissance. Because I was a trained artillery officer, they put me into a line company, said you're going to be the fire support coordinator. And not only did they activate us reservists, but they put us into an active duty battalion. In other words, there was no line between reservists and active duty. We were mixed together. That's an LAV-25. Okay? Yes?
That's got the 25 millimeter cannon, right?
Right. It's got the 25 millimeter Bushmaster, same as the Bradleys have.
Gotcha.
I did my combat tour with 2nd Light Armored Infantry Battalion in Kuwait from 1991. Hostilities started, I believe, was January 16th, ended January 27th, if I recall. And of all the units there, probably 2nd Light Armored Infantry and 1st Light Armored Infantry probably saw more action than any units in the Marine Corps, which I'll get into in a little bit.
Kuwait. Let's show them where Kuwait is. Around the world.
Okay. And if we could get the, I don't know if it's possible to get the borders of the country, because I'll tell you about a battle that was there and something cool when we get to it. So that's a little bit of background, okay? How many here think maybe they want to join the service? Okay. How many have thought about the Marine Corps? A couple of you. What do you think are some traits of a good Marine?
Pretty much exactly what you said, just honesty, hardworking, integrity.
Yes.
Just staying through and true to what you're doing and never getting
And able to work on a little bit of sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You need to have a lot of heart. In other words, you can't have any quit in you. Okay? So some of the things that you need to think about, you can't be afraid of a challenge. You can't be that guy who wants to always take the easy path. If you want to take the easy path, there are many jobs in the military that are necessary, that are needed. They still make you a patriot, okay, that people need to do. But if you're afraid of a hard life, do not join the Marine Corps. I'll tell you that right now. And especially, I've served in the infantry and I've served in the artillery. It is a hard life. I mean physically hard, little sleep, all the time, okay? I was deployed 15 of my last 18 months in. It's a tough place to have a family. But on the flip side, you are serving your country, you are the tip of the spear, we are the first to fight. When America calls 911, they call two people, the Marine Corps and the 82nd Airborne.
First one's in.
Okay?
First one's in, last one's out.
Always. So the 82nd Airborne's there with us. They usually get called about the same time we do. But when something happens, they're going to call the Marine Corps. There's constantly two what we call Special Operations Capable Marine Expeditionary Units, SOCMUs. One in the Pacific, one in the Mediterranean. It's a battalion of Marines with a composite squadron and a Forest Service support group that is constantly on the oceans of the world, ready to go if there's a problem somewhere. Okay? I've served on stuff like that. You have to, when you join the Marine Corps, even though we're currently in a conflict, we probably won't be in another year or two. It would be my guess we're going to be out of Afghanistan in the not too distant future. But just because you're at peace, you cannot assume as a Marine that you're going to stay that way. So you have to be, I guess the best way I could put it is a warrior. Don't join the Marine Corps if you do not have a warrior spirit. All Marines will fight. We are so forward that even our rear echelon people, if the battlefield changes quickly, will be called into service and will be expected to pick up a rifle. I have known guys that were lawyers that were called up to the front lines to fight, okay? It doesn't matter. You could be a guy working on a typewriter and an admin, and if we're losing infantrymen on the front and we need guys, battalion commanders will call back and say, go get a rifle and get your butt up there. You're trained, you're ready, you go. So do you understand that? Nobody joins the Marine Corps unless you're ready to do some fighting. And you never know where it's going to come from. Are we good with that? All right, so what I thought I'd do today is first show you a couple of typical training days. And they're not all super hardcore, like where you're sweating and dying every time you do something. So I brought a film from Okinawa. I was deployed to Okinawa in 1989. We did a 6-month cruise. And we're shooting some M101 artillery pieces.
How about the ABC one first?
Well, I actually wanted to end with that.
Okay, you want to end with that. Okay, so you want to go then to
Yeah, don't go there. Because there's actually kind of a little story.
the... Okay, so you want to go to...
the beginning of, the top, April 29th, that one.
Right there, okay?
Okay, so we're on a shoot here at a place called the Northern Training Area. It's in Japan. What you're looking at, once they get over there, is a 101 howitzer. Okay? You can see how big the rounds are. Those can be shot about 7,000 meters out of that particular cannon. That's Corporal Ehlert. If we can get some volume on that. Obviously, Corporal Ehlert, so stout. Now, those cannons were used in World War II, and they're still used to this day. The breech blocks on those are dated 1945. The reason we use those is they're very light for artillery uses. We can take them into jungle, desert, whatever, without bogging down, without getting stuck in the mud. We can sling them underneath a helicopter and fly them forward to where we need them. Okay? But artillery is the thing that make or break a battle with the infantry. When you're up against the foe, call for fire. These are the guys who shoot. Okay? And if you've ever been shot at, which you haven't yet, let me tell you, when there's an artillery barrage coming in, the whole world.
Explain to him what foe is, explain to him the whole scene.
Okay, so if we're in the infantry and we move to contact and I encounter the enemy, usually what I'll do, depending on what it is, deploy some machine guns to the front. I'll put a platoon up front, and then I'm going to take one platoon, explore the flank, if there is a flank, and I'm going to decide how I'm going to attack this position. Well, artillery allows you to suppress the enemy. When this stuff's flying in, they don't want to get up out of their holes. There's shards of metal flying everywhere. So when we call artillery on someone, that's going to force them down. And we're going to keep them down while we're advancing so they're not up shooting at us while we're covering that ground to close the gap. At some point, I do have to lift it. But hopefully by that point, we have reduced the enemy through the artillery itself, and they're a little bit shocked. So they tend to not come up the instant it lets off. They're going to stay in their holes because they're not sure if it's over yet, right? Because if you got those kind of high explosives, you're going to like hear one go off and go, oh, it must be over. I'll stick my head up now. Or do you think you might sit there for a little while? Probably sit there for a little while. So we're trying to cover that ground very quickly in that time period between the artillery lifts and we're going. Now we have smaller artillery and we have mortars that we can do that we can operate closer to. But once you're within 600 meters, I kind of have to, we call that danger close. Honestly, I would probably run my artillery till I'm within 200 or 300 meters, 2 to 3 football fields, and then I'm going to lift it. And then I might hit my machine guns to suppress for a little bit longer, or I might bring my mortars in for a little bit. And then when I get within 100 yards, we lift all the suppressive fires and we go to the final assault. So anyway, the infantry will be calling these guys for that support. Go ahead. Now I interviewed a couple of my troopers here just to give you an idea that...
Where's that? That's alright. So what's your function?
Battery smoke. I got a platoon commander.
Uh-huh. So what are you going to do when you get out, Marine?
I don't know yet, so hang out.
How short are you?
He had about a month left in the Marine Corps here.
So short I'm afraid to call home. Might answer the phone.
Married again.
Let me zoom on this.
This is the fifth time I've been married, the same woman. Yeah.
Now they're getting ready to do a fire mission here, which is to fire. Those tubes there are what the rounds are stored in.
One round. 2 bags.
Drop it.
Now with that guy that was running with the bags, those were extra pellets. When we have a fire mission, there's 5 bags in the tube. You remove a couple depending how far you want to shoot. So my job as a safety officer was to make sure he was removing the right number of bags. Because if you leave 1 or 2 bags too heavy in there, does your round go a lot further?
No.
Yeah, and since we're in Japan, on the other side of those mountains is civilian territory, it would be a bad thing if we overshot them. So one of my jobs was to monitor to make sure that we're actually putting the right amount of propellant in there, okay?
What happens when you say drop it?
That means put it in the powder pit. That means I have acknowledged that you have the correct number of bags and it's clear to fire. Now that round that he's about to shoot has a killing radius of 150 meters.
Drop it once.
50% of all personnel within 150 meters that are exposed will become casualties. The guy on the left there, that little thing he just grabbed with his hand, that's the gun sight.
374. Stand by.
That thing he just put on top is called the quadrant. That verifies the elevation. And you'll hear them talk about deflection. That's the left and right on the gun.
Here we are with PFC Casey. Where are you from, Casey?
Alabama, sir.
Alabama, huh?
Yes, sir.
How long you been in the Marine Corps?
Year and a month, sir.
And what's your function? What's your job?
Well, several jobs on the gun line, sir. But right now it's ammo.
Which is right down here. Why don't you take us through a complete round there, Casey?
Now the rounds will come without the fuse on them. So when he takes this out, he's got to take
Yeah,
it
go
out
ahead.
of the
Just go do
tube.
what you do.
He's got to screw the fuse on it, and there are many different kinds of fuses. I don't think he gets through this before another fire mission comes. We generate a lot of trash,
Okay, so we'll come back to you. We're gonna watch this.
which is called dunnage in the Marine Corps.
Drop it! Go ahead, Paul. Drop it, too.
You have ear protection.
Yes. But I'm a little deaf anyway. Now, if we have enough rounds prepped, we can drop a round about every 3 seconds.
Where are you from, Summers?
So, in combat,
And how much longer you got left?
it would be not uncommon to have a 20 or 30 round mission.
Over a month.
From each gun, there's
So you're
8
kind
guns
of
in
short.
combat.
How short would you say you are?
Tell you what. Getting there, sir.
Getting there, huh?
Yes, sir.
And you're currently the gunner on this gun?
Yes, sir.
And what are your duties entail?
Gunning, sir. Getting the right deflection on the calimeter. Laying the gun when we pull in position.
Who's the best gunner around here?
What's that, sir?
Who's the best gunner in this platoon?
Oh, I am, sir.
No doubt, huh?
Except for Wilkie.
Except for one other guy. That's the recorder. His job is to record every round that goes out, so we know where we shot it, when we shot it, in case anything went off target. So you can see that not everything is awful, right? Could you
What work
slide
is that?
forward and maybe find Sergeant Becker? I think we said he was up beyond that one, right?
Age or so.
About there, I think. Beyond that, even, right?
Cool, way cool.
Well, before him.
thing
I believe it.
Coolest thing
All right, you guys see enough artillery? Now, this is while we were in Japan.
You getting late
Okay,
since
this
you've been
is,
here? Have you done something in the
Fuji,
deal you
Japan
like?
area.
What?
Ate a banana?
Ate a banana? Yeah, he's getting shy on me. Oh, here we are with Lance Corporal Adam
Holy vapor.
Ehlert.
Lance Corporal of the Marine Corps, sir.
And where are you from there, Ehlert?
Minnesota, sir.
Goddamn cold up there, isn't it?
Cold as hell, sir.
What's the best thing you've done?
North.
What's the best thing you've done since you've been with us?
I've been with Delta, sir?
Yep.
Puerto Rico, sir.
Well, rumor has it you're a weightlifter.
That's true, sir.
Well, let's get a flex in them biceps. Let's see what we got here.
Flex, sir. Flex them, baby. Flex them. Woo!
So anyway, you get the idea that they're 18-year-old, 19-year-old guys. They're like you, right? These are not some magical men, okay? They're going to goof off sometimes, okay? Just like you guys goof off sometimes. They have some fun, okay? Not long after this, part of the artillery's mission is to secure our own perimeters, okay? So we have to be able to patrol. We have to be able to fend off the enemy with small arms. So if you can find the machine gun range. So this is, typical day of Marine. If you like blowing things up, if you like shooting things, if you like dealing with heavy weaponry, you will never lack for something to do in the combat arms.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Right there?
Yep. They're shooting an M16 machine gun here. Shoots a 7.62 by 51 round, which you would know is 308.
And your right hand on the trigger, that way you can adjust it quicker. Hey.
There's a gunner, an A gunner, and an ammo bearer on each team. That's a T&E, that tripod that it sits on. It keeps it so that you can shoot to the same spot all the time. When we're in the defense, we use that. You see the target on the right, there was one miss that just hit to the left of it. Oops. Can we fast forward through that a little bit? Apparently they had a malfunction. Fast forward. Okay, yeah, actually see one of the tracers just hit there? It was burning there. Now one of the cool things we do is when we do a company defense at night, it's called the $1 Million Minute. Each artillery company has 8 60 machine guns, 8 50 calibers, 8 artillery pieces, plus the 160 men that occupy it. And when we do a defense, all of those weapon systems are firing at maximum rate in approximately 1 minute. That simulates that we're being overrun by the enemy. And when you've done this at night, tracers are going out, it's absolutely stupefying how much is in the air, especially when you consider that for every tracer you see, there are 4 other bullets. You only load every 4th round as a tracer. Okay? So that means between tracers, there's 3 other in the air that you don't see. Okay, if we go forward a little bit, they got a spot where they're going to bring up squads to shoot. Probably a couple minutes. Go forward. That's a 50 cal there. See, they started a little fire out there with the tracers. Yes, I've had deer go across these things, and yeah, it didn't work out very well for the wildlife. Okay, there's going to be a spot where you'll see some squads moving up into firing positions. We'll keep going. Oh, you can go substantially forward. Maybe like, there we go. Now we're kind of getting into it. And then they bring up other Marines with their M16s, and they'll do it. There you go. That's a good spot right there. This kind of simulates a fire team coming up, which is 4 men. They've actually got a little fire team plus there. They'll get online, and they're going to issue what they call a fire command. We don't just shoot at anything. Typically in a squad, when we make contact, the sergeant will say, fire command, 300 yards to your front, target is. He'll identify the target. He'll identify the rate and who he wants to shoot there. He'll say, fire team 1, your target is. Fire team 2, your target is. And he's about to issue that. Does it look like fun to anybody? that in a minute. Okay, so you got kind of idea what kind of training we do in Okinawa. You're in the field a lot, you're eating MREs, you're living in the grass with the bugs and the snakes and everything else. But you get to go out and do this kind of stuff on a pretty regular basis, okay? Does that sound like if you want to join the Marine Corps, that's the kind of thing you want to do? We're okay with that. All right, so I finished my active duty tour in '89. I joined the infantry, and I got called up for Kuwait, and I went to there. You can pull up a map of Kuwait. Okay. So I got attached to the 2nd Light Armored Infantry, and we got sent to the border of Kuwait, which if I can find one. Okay, so here's the Kuwait's right down here. My company, if you could make Kuwait bigger, there. This is called the heel, and this is called the elbow of Kuwait. Kafji was a little town right here on the coast. This is where I was, a place called Wafra, OP2, Observation Post 2. And there's a place here called Observation Post 4, or Hajul. Okay? On the night of January 29, 1991, Saddam Hussein decided he had been bombed for about a week or two. There had been no ground action. Okay? My company was doing what they call a screening mission here. We're just kind of keeping an eye on border, making sure nothing's going on. First LAI had a screening mission going on here, and there was a recon company here in Kafji, almost nothing there. On that night, Saddam Hussein sent 2 divisions south. Does anybody know about how big a division is? The Iraqi division is about 5,000 men. He sent the 3rd Armored Division straight down a road here, which is where I was parked. He sent the 5th Mechanized Division mostly down here and another column over here to the heel. We were the first ones hit. About 2,000 on the 29th of January, I was serving a watch. And you're supposed to check in with battalion every hour. So I'm trying to check into battalion, and I can't get through on the radio. And you're supposed to do an hourly check-in. And it's not working out. So then I hear Arab voices on our channel, which was not that unusual because we had Egyptian allies and we had Syrian allies at that time. But the fact that I can't get through bothers me. So I think back to when I was a young lieutenant sitting in some boring class on communications. And it's one of those things that you think, I'll never use that. Why do they teach us this stuff? And I remembered a thing called a long wire antenna, which gives you directional ability with a radio so that you can burn through jamming, which is what I suspected was happening. Of course, never having been jammed before, I didn't know really what that looked like. Well, we burn through, I make contact with battalion, and they inform us that 80 to 100 BMPs, which are Soviet armored personnel carriers, are moving south down the road towards our position. I am in a company of 16 vehicles, all light-skinned. We have 4 anti-tank variants, which shoot the TOW missiles. And the others, 2 of them are mortars, which aren't going to do anything against the BMP, and 8 of them are LAV-25s. Okay? In other words, this is bad. Okay? So we're set back from the border a little bit, and about this time that we figure out what's going on, and the battalion commander is calling for us to move forward. He hasn't really decided yet. We start receiving illumination rounds into our position, which tells us that the Iraqis know where we are. They're putting a loom on us so they can start putting artillery on us. We have 4 TOW missiles per TOW variant for a total of 16. We had not received a full combat load of ammunition yet. We had the 8 LAV-25s, had the Bushmasters. They'll stop a BMP, but they won't stop a tank, and there are tanks mixed into this. There's actually another, we find out a little later, there's another 50 tanks coming. Okay?
Fun time.
So we have a decision. Now, our company is the anti-armor company. We were built to stop enemy armor. But we don't have that many anti-armor capabilities. And what we had planned to do in the event this happened was drop back, form a skirmisher's line, which is like an inverted V, and shoot the TOWs into the middle with the LAV-25s providing flank security. But we really weren't planning on facing 120 armored vehicles. That really wasn't in our... We were thinking a much smaller number. So there's a berm that separates the country of Kuwait from Saudi Arabia. That's a very steep mound, if you will, that a tank can't just get up and drive up. And every 15 miles, there was a police post and where a road came through. So we're looking at our map, trying to decide, do we drop back? Do we form a skirmishers line? Let these guys come through to our side of the border, form a V, right? Take our shots, drop back, take our shots. And in normal circumstances, I would say yes, that's what we should have done. But I had another piece of information that was relevant. The 2nd Marine Division was sitting in a place called Cabrit that was 30 miles south of us without ammunition. It had not gotten off the boats yet. So now we're in a position that if we let these guys through, this brigade through, just short of a division, they're going to roll into Cabrit and kill our 15,000 Marines there. So now we are forced into a fight scenario. We are now what we call decisively engaged. We must now stop them here, stop them now, or the Marine Corps, the 2nd Marine Division, is in trouble, which is nothing what we were designed for and nothing that we planned for. So, the company officers got together, said, what are we going to do? And we decided that because of the terrain, that there was a choke point where they had to come through that road. Okay? So we said, we'll take our 16 TOW missiles, which certainly isn't enough to take out the 120 vehicles that we're following. We're going to move forward, we're going to set up on the choke point, and we're going to try to stop them at the choke point. If we kill a tank in the choke point, we know that they have bulldozers with them. We know that they're going to start cutting down that berm. And this is where the Marine Corps does something special. We are combined arms experts. We are the people that can call our own air, our own artillery to help us when we're in trouble. So the plan is that we're going to go forward, we're going to hit them at the choke point, and we're going to call for combined arms support. And that's exactly what we did. So our battalion commander met up with us, Alpha Company met with us, I was in Delta Company, we all got up there, and we formed up on that roadside. Now, it was a little tenuous. As that tank was coming down the road, looking through thermal imaging, that post, one end of the berm to the other was probably as wide as this room. We must kill the tank right there. If we hit it early, they're going to go around it, filter through, get online, and we're in trouble. If we hit it late, it's going to block our shot into it. They're going to use it as a blocker. They're going to come out and get in the skirmish lines, and we're in trouble. A TOW missile takes 30 seconds to fly its maximum range, which is 3,750 meters. Our gunner, Edmund Willis, he's had the first tank kill in the Gulf War. The first ground-to-ground combat came here. Okay, this was about 20:30 at night. So he takes a shot. He has to estimate when they're 30 seconds out because we're at maximum range. That involves a little bit of math skills for those of you who are in my class. This is something we teach. So anyway, he takes the shot. Missile's flying for 30 seconds. He catches the tank right in the perfect spot. We then call in F-18s, Harriers, and artillery to damage them. We end up killing somewhere in the neighborhood of 29 vehicles that night. They were turned back where we were. Battle lasted from 20:30 till about 02 in the morning. Okay? Say that your rear ends pucker tight. That was also the night that Saddam Hussein had lit all the oil wells on fire. Up to that, the skies were clear. What he had done prior to the attack was to blow all the oil wells so there was smoke in the air and you could not see, the jets could not look down. He didn't count on the fact that we have technology you can look through that stuff. Okay? So that was my first bloodying, so to speak. Okay? After that, we went further west. We linked up with 1st LAI, who, if you could show there.
Actually, I got a.
If you could, Kuwait again.
Well, here's a picture I just found. See if this is close to what you.
Okay, so I gotta orient myself here.
There's the
Kuwait's. Okay, so here's the heel. That's where we are. This group here that was to our left, which we could actually see from that distance,
Wow.
had a. It's probably 40 or 50 miles, but at night when you got tracers and stuff going, you can see quite a ways. We were in a little bit elevated position. They had a recon post that called for an extract, and the Marine LAI company, very similar to mine, that went to go get them, ran into their 120 tanks and BMPs in the middle of the night. I mean, they were literally mixed in each other's lines. Okay? Minimum arming distance on a TOW is 75 meters. They are within minimum arming distance. This is the armored equivalent of a night fight. If they don't stop them there, I explained to you why we had to stop them, right? So they call for air there as well. Due to a malfunctioning TOW missile, or Maverick missile, I'm sorry, a Maverick from one of the aircraft, and one misidentified vehicle. 2 Marine LAVs were killed there. 11 Marines died at that spot. Okay, but they stuck to their guns. And even though we can't kill a tank with an LAV-25, the LAV-25 were pounding those tanks so hard that the concussion that the Iraqi tank drivers were feeling, even though it wasn't penetrating, disoriented them, and they withdrew. In other words, there was such noise and shock inside those vehicles that they couldn't function anymore. So even though we can't kill a tank with an LAV-25, it was enough to push them back. And then in Khafji, it was basically unopposed. They came into that. There was a Marine recon post. They got trapped there with about 2,000 Iraqis. And they hid on a rooftop and continued to call combined arms on the Iraqis from that rooftop while they were surrounded. Okay? So that was a pretty significant battle. It was a skirmish in the big annals of war. But what it provided was a knowledge of how the Iraqis fought. Now, when it was over, we killed about 700 Iraqis, damaged 300 vehicles, and basically wiped the 5th Mechanized Division off the face of the planet, and the 3rd never saw action again. Okay? The generals used that for information. Now, this is where I'm going to fast forward a little bit. This is where something cool happened to me. And it took 10 years for me to know. And this is part of why you join the military a little bit. 2002, I go to Washington, D.C. And I'm going to go to the Marine 8th and I barracks to watch the Marine Silent Drill Team and the Marine Band. And I know that in the summer there'll be a bunch of Marine lieutenants there in their dress blues coming up from the basic school where I had gone 15 years earlier. And I go to a restaurant with my wife and I sit down and there's 4 Marine lieutenants sitting there in their dress blues looking sharp. And I kind of give them a Semper Fi and they're like, well, were you in? Yeah, I was in. Well, what'd you do? And I told them, and they said, well, you were in the Gulf War, what'd you do there? And I related this story. And this is where the cool thing happened. They looked at me and they said, we just studied that. You went up against the 3rd Armored Division. And they were using our decision-making process, okay, of not taking the safe route, not taking, maybe we'll get a resupply, we should drop back, and being bold and moving forward into the fight and using the choke point. And they were studying that. Something I had done had made history. And that's part of what you do in the military, whether it's in the Air Force, the Marines, the Navy, or the Army. If you are engaged in the service, you are making United States history. Something that you do will be in a history book. That's something to be proud of, guys. You know, Colonel Peoples here was in, help me here.
Flying jets.
No, where you were in the Balkans.
Oh, Bosnia.
Bosnia. That is part of United States history, our intervention into Bosnia, the peacekeeping force that was there, okay? If you join the service, any service, you get a chance to make history, okay? Now, we talked a lot about, there were more battles that went on, and I'm not going to tell you about all of those. But part of another mission of the U.S. military is humanitarian, okay? I don't know anyone in the U.S. military who, when faced with starving people or people in trouble, who doesn't want to help. So right after the war ended, we were in Kuwait City and we were occupying, and I found a stash of food, and if you could do that, ABC News. This was another thing we did that I feel good about. And that any military person would feel good about. This is things that we do, humanitarian missions. It's not just about damaging the enemy. So this aired on ABC News, World News Tonight, March 7th, 1991. Which I was not home to see, I'll tell you how many times.
These are the faces of a hungry city. The faces that welcomed a few Marines today who brought them some food and water. A small moment of kindness in a long season of war.
We'll give them 1 cup of sugar per family, and then we'll give them like 3 cups of flour, 4 cups of flour per family, and we have some split pea, so we'll give them that.
The rations came from an abandoned Iraqi supply point. Vegetable butter and rice from Baghdad, and red lentils and coffee.
How's everybody doing today? Good?
It was precious treasure for a poor neighborhood of Indians, Pakistanis, Sudanese, Bangladeshis, and even some Iraqis. Foreign laborers imported by Kuwait to do the country's hardest work. The Crown Prince announced today that food is now in 95% of the supermarkets. What he did not say was that most of those markets are closed with the food still inside and no apparent effort to distribute it. A few long bread lines are just about the only means of distribution.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The Marines weren't under any orders today. They just found the food and decided to put it to some good use rather than letting it spoil.
The war's over, the fighting's over, and now all the people who have been hurt by the war need some food or whatever. It's what we can do to help.
Give the whole bag. That's the last one.
It wasn't much, but for people with almost nothing, it was something. Jim Wooten, ABC News, Kuwait City.
So, you know, if you go to the Marine Corps, we've gone into Somalia when they had a famine to make sure that the food that was being given there was given to the people. Marines have gone into Haiti when Haiti had an earthquake and they needed help getting food out to the people. Tsunami. So there are other good things that the Marine Corps does than just fight the nation's wars, and things that are worth doing. Okay? So I've talked a lot, so I'm going to ask you guys if you have any questions. Yes?
What kind of medical courses does the Marines have?
Marines do not have any medical courses. We rely on Navy corpsmen. Okay, so when we're out in the field, there's one individual attached to each platoon that is, we call him Doc. He's a Navy corpsman. Even though he joins the Navy, he will go and serve with the Marine Corps wherever the Marine is. And by the way, we love our docs. They have to carry everything we carry and more. They carry everything that a Marine carries into combat, plus their medical kit. They're tough dudes. The Navy also has a medical program if you want to be a doctor or a nurse or things of that nature, that you can either go directly from medical school, be commissioned as a lieutenant commander into the Navy, or if you join the Navy, I've had friends who've done this, they've gone to college and they go to medical school on the Navy's dime, and when they're done, they owe them 6 years, and they serve either in a naval hospital, a trauma surgeon, at the battalion aid station, things of that nature. Okay, so the guys who are cutting on us when we're getting wounded in the head, those are Navy medical doctors.
And what about the hand-to-hand combat courses?
Hand-to-hand?
Yeah.
You're going to do that when you go through School of Infantry. You're going to do that in your battalion. That's just part of who we are. Any other questions? Quiet group. Who's more or less likely to want to go now? More? Okay. So again, I'm not going to tell you that it's an easy life. It isn't. You're in the field a lot. You work hard. But what you do makes a difference. Okay? You're going to write another chapter in U.S. history. You're going to meet people from a foreign country if we're engaged there, and you're going to do some good things for them. You know, my war in Kuwait, we were keeping those people from being butchered by Saddam Hussein. I have some issues with my health and some other things that happened there, some killings that happened that kind of bothered me. It bothered me for a number of years, but I would never trade the experience for anything. That experience molded me into who I am, a better man for what I've done. And I think any of you, you don't have to spend 20 years if you go in, okay? You can do 4, you can do 8, you can do 10. But the idea of service to one's nation, to one's community, that's a noble goal. And that's something all of you should strive to do, whether it's in the military or the Peace Corps or in your community. You should do some service of some sort. It makes for a stronger country. Any other questions?
All right, everybody give a round of applause.